Thank you. How's it going? My name is Strother Bullens, and I am here to host It's All About the Studio, the TRAINcycle Summit's Pro Sound panel focusing on the music business in the recording studio. As I said, I'm your host and moderator. And first, we thank everyone for attending our first Pro Sound Summit. And we hope that you have a great day learning and sharing. And please note, Sennheiser is giving away a free pair of HD25 headphones to a lucky participant today. The winner will be drawn from the names of those registered for this event. And this will happen during today's keynote with Maxine Gutierrez. So stay tuned for that. For this panel, we focus on audio production-based engineering and the practices of the pros that do it. We want you, the summit's attendee, to chime in with questions too. So we welcome the following folks. First of all, Anna Frick, a mastering engineer and the Restoration Center manager at Airshow Mastering in Boulder, Colorado. Notably, she mastered Third Man Records' Grammy-winning box set, The Rise and Fall of Paramount Records, active in the music industry, member of AES, the P&E wing of the Recording Academy, and the chapter head for the Colorado branch of soundgirls.org. Next, we have Karen Kane, a producer and recording engineer, live sound engineer, and audio educator in Wilmington, North Carolina. However, having worked in the major music production hubs of Boston and New York City, she was the 2013 Producer of the Year at the Carolina Music Awards. She was nominated for 3 Juno, the Canadian Grammy Awards, awards for that. And next we have Benjy Johnson, a producer, engineer, guitarist, writer, composer of broadcast and commercial audio, and the owner proprietor of Earth Tones Commercial Audio in Greensboro, North Carolina. He has actually been very much involved in commercial and broadcast audio, working for Red Bull Marketing, Sony Gaming, CMT Network, ESPN Radio, and TV film credits include Walking Dead, Hallmark movies, the Discovery Channel's Shark Week, and Cartoon Network's Teen Titans. And we have Bill Stevens, a producer, engineer, guitarist, composer, recording arts, and music business professional from a family of music professionals, and a partner in crime with Evan Ritchie of Ovation Sound in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Okay. So first of all, I want to get started with your own micro autobiography. Allow you to tell your story a little bit from your own perspective instead of me do that. So to get focused, what was the personal experience or personal experiences that inspired you to pursue music and audio production as a career? And we'll start with Anna Frick.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I kind of had like kind of a light bulb moment when I was in high school. I very selfishly wanted a good recording of my friend's songs to take with me to college. And so I locked her up in a studio and said, "You're going to record." And I produced the record, though I didn't know what producing meant at the time. And I sat next to the engineer. It was the first time I'd ever been in a studio. And I sat next to the engineer and asked him all of the questions. Just like, what does that knob do? What does that button do? Why are you doing this? And then at the end of the project, he kind of looked at me and he goes, "You know, you can make a career out of this." And it was just not something I had ever considered. It's not one of those things that's listed in the, career counselor's database of careers. So I just kind of set after it after that. That was what I wanted to do. And so I focused on it and made it happen.
Very good. Very good. So we will move on to Benjy Johnson. So tell us about your personal experience that kind of
mine was sort of the same as Anna is talking about, except mine was in college, and mine was someone recording my band, and they were actually recording it they were recording us as a demo to get into what is now Full Sail University, and Full Sail was like in a strip mall. At that time, it was tiny, and so this guy was actually a professor of mine in college, which none of us were going to college for music. We just happened to have a band. We just happened to have a band in college. And so he had to record a demo for us to get into, for him to get into Full Sail, using us as his guinea pig band. And he rented all the equipment, and it was in his house and everything. And this was in 1987, 88, something like that. So it wasn't like, it was 8-track reel-to-reel and a mixing console and all that. So I kind of experienced that, but my thing was sort of the same thing as Anna's talking about, where I had more grandiose ideas for the recordings, not just being the guitar player in the band. I was like, oh, and this song's got to go here, and then the intro to this song's going to do this, and it was all while I was recording all this, and the guy was just like, we'll get to that later. He didn't tell me, there's a career in it, or I was going to be a producer. But at the same time, it's like you get an arrangement to producer mentality early on. You just don't quite know what it is. So it took me a long time to really gravitate towards that's what I wanted to do. I was 29 years old when I started this. I'm 53 now, so I kind of got a late start to the game with no recording education. I just basically bought all the stuff, went into debt, opened up all the manuals, and learned how to do it,
Very good. Karen, so the question was getting started with your own micro autobiography. What was the personal experience or experiences? The question was getting started with your own micro autobiography. What was the personal experience or experiences? The question was getting started with your own micro autobiography.
Okay, hang on. There's some confusing things going on.
The question was getting started with your own micro.
Oh.
Are we good? Okay, so actually I was just asking Karen the same question, because she came in a little bit late. When she comes back, we will catch up with her. For now, though, let's go ahead and talk to Bill Stevens about his experience that prompted him to pursue music as a career.
I don't want to tell the same exact story as everyone else has, but my experience was very similar. I was always a musician. I never thought about being an engineer, a producer, or anything like that. I had a little bit of exposure to it when I was at Berklee College of Music studying guitar, which I don't really play that much guitar anymore. I'm more of a piano player now, but the one thing that was different for me, or not different, but the one thing that I could add, I'm sure it was the same for everybody, but I've always been really great with languages. I lived in Africa for a summer, and by the time I left, I was speaking fluent Swahili. I lived in Brazil for a few months, and by the time I left, I was speaking fluent Portuguese. It was just like the languages clicked with me. And I feel like the first time I sat down with Pro Tools, it was like another language. And I was like, I understand this. This makes sense to me. And, a couple of hours reading the manual and then just stealing shortcuts off of people. I started to become really efficient and fast in the platform. And before I knew it, I was pretty good at it. And people started to ask me to make records for them because I was doing a better job than some of the other people that they knew. And so it just became clear to me. It's like, all right, well, this is something I'm good at and I like it. So why not? Let's jump in.
There I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm glad you're back. Did you hear the question? The question was, we were going to get started with your own micro autobiography to kind of tell the story of what your personal experience or experiences were that inspired you to pursue music as a career, audio production as a career.
Okay, so starting out with answering that, I have one word, and that word is Woodstock. I was 18 that year, and I attended Woodstock. I already loved music, but that's what got me interested in audio engineering. because I could see the tower with the board, and it's just a whole long story. But through a family friend, I got a job in a recording studio when I was 19 in New York City, in the business end of things, because women didn't do that kind of work. So I learned the studio business part, but I started playing with the gear at night and on weekends, and I basically taught myself. And I finally went up to the owner of the studio, and there was an engineer who was out sick. And they said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'll do the session." And they're like, "You can do the session?" I said, "Yes, I can do the session." So I did the session, and that bug stuck. So that was a long time ago, like 45 years.
And people are still talking about it, which I think is pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah.
And I think the next topic that we should just kind of get out of the way so we can be more positive is the COVID elephant in the room. And we've all lived through the challenges this past year, 2020. And now we're here. We're all here. You all continue to do your craft. But what ways did you keep working and stay inspired and get creative during this time that we were so socially distant? Maybe we could start with Ms. Frick.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
COVID and the past year, how did you work through it? What kind of challenges were presented, and how did you stay inspired and get creative? Now, as a mastering engineer, I do want to say that your lifestyle is socially distanced anyway, right? We all agree.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's fun.
You, because probably it was the least amount of transition to somebody not being with you in the room, right? So maybe you could kind of tell us a little bit about that, about how it was or it wasn't different.
Yeah. I've been really, really fortunate in this whole thing, in that I haven't stopped working. It's kind of been a bit crazy nuts at our studio. And we about 5 years ago, we downsized our studio from a 4,000 square foot space to about 1,000 square foot. And it's just me and the owner of the studio, David Glasser. And so, and it's the new studio is on his property up in the woods. And so I've kind of been joking that, we social distanced before it was cool. We self-quarantined the entire studio 5 years ago. And we have gotten used to just not having clients around. But the other thing that, kind of the other aspect of our business is doing a lot of restoration work. And that is just taking big collections of old media and digitizing and preserving it. And so that's largely kept us afloat when the mastering work has been slow. I've been fortunate to be able to kind of bring some equipment home and do some of that work from home. So the first 3 or 4 months of lockdown, I was working from home, and then went back to being in the studio a little bit, and then and always going into the studio when I had client work, and then I had a whole bunch of restoration that I would do on headphones anyway, so I was able to do that at home as well. So our transition has been pretty mild, and now it's like everything that people have been creating in their time at home is now coming to fruition and coming to our door. And so the last probably 3 or 4 months for our studio have been just slammed with work. So I feel really fortunate. It is odd not having clients in, just going back and forth, as opposed to, over several days on a project, as opposed to having them sitting next to me at the console and making the decisions with our heads together. So that's a little bit different, but we're working with it, and it is what it is. I mean, to be fair, probably 80% of our sessions, maybe even 90% of our sessions were unattended to begin with. So we're really just missing our local clients and the few clients that would travel to town. But for the most part, it's not a whole lot different for us.
Very good. Karen, what would you like to share about that?
Well, COVID's been really difficult for me. being at high risk. I can't go to UNCW and teach my class there. I did spend last summer reworking one of my classes so that it would work on Zoom, and that went very well this past fall. However, the advanced version, I struggled to make a Zoom class, and it just didn't work. It couldn't work. How could it work? It's a class of all hands on. How do you turn that into Zoom? You don't. So we're skipping that course this semester. And I'm doing one of the good things about what's happened is that I have three, I've got so far 3 private students that I'm teaching on Zoom at home. The hardest thing is my studio. I won't go and be with, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 people and do sessions. I just can't do it. COVID's too scary out there right now. So I've lost that income pretty much. So my studio, I have a partner in the studio and he seems okay doing his sessions, but so I'm not doing that, but I am loving the private student thing that I got going on now. So I'm doing that. And hopefully things will change soon.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
We're going to actually go to some questions that are coming in, and we'll come back to our other 2 panelists in just a second. Question is, what practices have you adopted during COVID that you may keep in place when restrictions are lifted? Is that something that maybe with Benjy, would you like to dive into that? Because I know that that's going to be something you're dealing with.
Yeah, I actually did a short video when the whole thing started. Sorry about the glare off my glasses. I just can't read anything unless I have my glasses on. So, yeah, I did a short video when the whole thing started, and it's weird because even looking at my policies that changed on my video, the more or less or more unsure we are about what it actually is and how it spreads and how to contain it and how to keep all that. It's like I can even push people to the video that I made, which essentially just says, like, I changed no guests, because basically if you have a band and there's 3 people and then they bring their girlfriends and then their mom comes by to see them and all that, I was like, no guests. You can't play my house instruments. You can't touch anything. And, I'll say you can't touch anything. Don't touch my stuff that would normally be provided, guitars, keyboards, things like that I would have to clean. And also I made a deal with this company called Stedman. They make really killer pop screens. They make these really great big ones, and they're metal, but they're plastic coated. They don't have any fabric in them. So I can actually wash and clean those pop screens, and I can clean them with alcohol between every session. And I actually, between every singer, I have a vocal booth. You can see it wasn't intended to be behind me, but you can see it behind me. So they're in their own contained little fishbowl in there, right? My lobby goes to the vocal booth. I can shut my door, which is a blessing because I don't want people right up in my face anyway, telling me, hey man, I'm pointing at the screen and saying, move this over and do that. And it's like, great. I just tell everybody, stay out of my control room, which if I could keep that policy moving forward after that, it would be really great, but I probably won't be able to. So, and that's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not. So, yeah, I just have them. I have to clean I have to clean the pop screens and really the mics and headphones too. Anything that touches anybody. And I clean it with, for now, until I run out of it. There was a distillery somewhere around here. My wife actually acquired it through a coworker, but they're like half-gallon. I think it was a vodka distillery because it smells like vodka, but it's just I just have these half-gallon jugs of what would be considered pure alcohol. It's 80%. God forbid if you ever drank it. I guess the distilleries took over making sanitizer. So this stuff is liquid. It's not gel. So I can actually use it like I would rubbing alcohol. And literally I've been wiping down headphones and those pop screens every day. And I haven't had anything, even headphone wise, start to deteriorate. So I don't know what the deterioration rate of cleaning that stuff and sanitizing it, but I sanitize it for, I sanitize it for my clients, not passing it, but I also have this thing around my neck continually. So it goes like this between rooms. I have a second mask I put on top of it. It becomes a pain throughout the day, but it's all you can do. And my thing is, I shut down for a little while. I worked with one single client that contacted me the day after our state was shut down. So I was really lucky to work during what was considered our lockdown and our shutdown, but it was with one client, nobody else. He and I literally went back and forth between our houses. And that was our promise to each other. I said, I can work with you, but you just got to promise me that you're just going between your houses. And that was cool, the whole time with that. And when everything opened back up, it was like people were waiting in line, so I just have to be super, super, super careful. My room is big. So when I put them in the room, where I would place them on a normal basis is 6 feet apart anyway, and the weird thing is the spread of it keeps getting worse and worse. So I'm actually more concerned about it now, like today, than I was 4 months ago. And I don't know if that's because it seems to be spreading more or just the hysteria behind the whole thing of it just keeps getting closer. It feels like it's just closing in on you. So, that's, all I can do is all I can do. I mean, I do everything I possibly think I can do. And I've been safe so far. I've had some clients that have had it, but not when they have been around me, like, away, and I've heard that they had it later. But I mean, that's one of those things where you look at it and you're thinking, golly, man, they could have been in here with me when they had it, and I wouldn't have known that. So I just have to really be as adamant and really feel like I'm seeing a light at the end of the tunnel with this vaccination thing. And hopefully over the next 3 or 4 months, it'll just be one of those things. And I don't know whether that's another thing too, is, and a question that you guys might want to answer about this is, are you going to require vaccination? Are you going to require vaccination notice from people coming in studio? What I say, you have to have been, show me that you're vaccinated to come in and work in here. I don't know if I can do that, but anyway, carry on. I'll talk forever if you let me.
No, that's great. And actually, I think something that you said kind of pointed out, sort of a mutual understanding that we're all going to try to be as safe as we possibly can if we're going to be around each other. So luckily, artists are kind of empathetic anyways. So hopefully that will continue. So I think we have another question that was coming in. This is from Aaron. This is from Aaron Flyer, and is specifically when it comes to ensemble recording for woodwinds, how have you worked around the spatial aspect of recording multiple instruments together while respecting social distancing? I'm not sure if Bill would like to tackle that, or if somebody else would like to. Certainly, that's
sure. So the only time that I've done a recording session with multiple wind players was in a concert hall, and they had these mechanisms built out of PVC pipe and plastic sheeting. So each player was in a little cubicle, and obviously anyone not playing was masked. The piano player was masked, and the woodwind players were in these little boxes, and it was weird. It's hard. A lot of times people don't realize how important it is. Musicians, we spend our whole lives playing music in front of people and getting energy from people. And as soon as you step into the recording studio and you're playing for a wall or a window or one single engineer, it's hard to drum up that same energy. Well, I can tell you that it's even harder to drum that energy up when you're standing in this plastic cube. So that was difficult. And then otherwise, I've just been doing it one at a time. I'm actually working on an orchestra project right now, and I've never, ever done this before. I'm recording each musician individually. They come in, they record their part. They're in the live room. I'm in the control room. We never, breathe the same air. And then as soon as they're done, I go into paranoid clean mode, and anything that I can think that they maybe have touched or breathed on, I clean the what out of it. And I do want to say one thing. The first record I ever made when I was a kid, it was at this place called Star Trek Studios in Greenville, North Carolina. I don't know if it still exists, but they made this huge deal out of like, we clean and sterilize our studio after every session, and that always kind of stuck with me. So to piggyback off of what Benjy was saying, I don't think I'll ever stop cleaning after sessions. I think it's a good habit. I think it makes your clients feel comfortable, and to know that you put that energy into preparing for their session. Like you're going to come in here. This is your space to create. It doesn't have someone else's leftover funk in it. Although sometimes the leftover funk can be kind of funky, but yeah, so that's what I got.
Good stuff. And actually, being in teaching in middle school, I'm witnessing students learning how to play instruments right now in the very situation that you're talking about, being distanced and learning how to do that. So who knows, maybe we'll have a generation of folks that are already quite used to recording what used to be all together as an ensemble as individuals and overdubs. Moving on to another topic, getting into gear, because we did advertise that we were going to talk about gear. But I think rather than dig too deep, I just want to give everybody an opportunity to talk about, is good gear or pro-capable gear more or less plentiful than ever before? All the in-the-box products are increasingly similar to each other, and analog gear may be less so. But speaking to an audience that may be trying to make decisions about products that they invest in, how would you address that about the quality of gear today, and how you would invest if you were starting off with, say, a windfall of $1,400 that may show up at some point? I don't know.
Of how much money?
$1,400. Supposedly there's another a stimulus. I just threw that number out there.
All right. I was like, where did that amount come from? That was pretty specific, but I got it. I wasn't thinking about this.
Sorry, I'm thinking about that all the time.
I don't know. What would you get? I mean,
can I say one?
Yes, go, please.
Please.
So a little perspective here. About 15 years ago, the Waves Diamond Bundle cost $4,000. And my studio partner has just bought a new one for $300. So things have changed in a great way in that way. And I also think that the plugins in general, I didn't think I'd ever be saying this, but they sound great. And they're just getting better and better all the time. I'm a real old school analog, love recording to tape. Can't do it anymore, obviously. And I miss analog, but the advantages, of course, with editing and everything else digital. So I'm really happy with the trend of things coming down in price, and it's all good quality. I love Universal Audio's products. Can't beat it. So there.
Coming from an analog world, and you straddling coming all the way across the analog world and digital tape and into Pro Tools and talking about the Diamond Bundle and everything, what is your like favorite digital plugin kind of thing that makes you not want to go back to tape again?
Anything Lexicon, the 480L, because I worked on the originals, the 480L boxes.
Yeah.
What was before that? The 224. Wait, there was one in between. I forget. Anything Lexicon, though.
I think it would be that one that's on my screen right there. That's the two. What is that? The two something? I don't know what it is.
Well, there's 224, and then there's the
that's
480L.
the 224.
But anyway, and things like Fairchild compressor. It sounds great. You know, I own a couple of distressors. I use them when I record. I don't have the plugin, but I would get it.
The real ones are better than the plugin.
Well, that's true. There are things that are like that, but it's really changed. It's really changed.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to throw it out here. It's all about knowing your gear, whether that's a plugin or a hardware, like take the time to know it. I stepped into the mastering world in somebody else's workflow in somebody else's studio. And I spent the time learning every notch on every knob. And it was painful and it took a long time. But I know the flavor of everything. I know which pieces are my favorite, which pieces are not. And that is the same for plugins. It's not about what gear you have necessarily, if you know how to use it, and taking the time to learn it. It's not about getting like the hottest new piece of gear or, you know, the most vintage piece of gear or anything like that. Like it's about knowing how to use it.
Great point.
How many of you
Right.
learned producer and mastering engineers' names from reading record credits? Okay. Well, the only reason I mentioned that is because I saw Anna's name and I saw Air Show, and I used to see David's name on every Bela Fleck and Jerry Douglas record. And I finally met Bill Vorndick years ago, and he's a great guy, and he used you guys on all those records. So when I saw your name pop up on this thing today, I was like, I'm going to bring up that I miss liner notes, not being an old man, but I learned a lot of people's names and a lot of studio names and a lot of recurring engineers on records that I would be like, man, I really love the way that record sounded. And you would go, and it would be the same engineer as another record that you loved. So you started to kind of, like when they started having magazine interviews and interviews and book interviews with people that were behind the scenes, like engineers, you'd never see them talk about anything. You just see their name on record credits. So I just wanted to mention that's really cool that you're doing that. And I'm glad that you guys are still in business and doing your thing. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, Air Show has such a rich history, especially in the acoustic and bluegrass world. And Dave's still doing his thing and rocking it. And I work in his studio. It's just him and me. And you know, Karen, we do work off tape. I'm actually picking up a reel from a client tomorrow. So
2-inch?
No, it's half inch.
Half-inch.
Yeah, stereo half-inch.
Stereo half-inch, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to come from that perspective. You know, I also learned on analog equipment in college. And so I'm on a system that doesn't do well with too many plugins. So I'm kind of forced to use all the outboard gear.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just not very stable to run multiple plugins on Soundblade is the DAW that I use. So I'm still very much in the hands-on, you know, like literally physically hands-on world, and I love it. So it's kind of, I kind of lean more towards the outboard gear because I like it and it's comfortable to me.
With good reason. With good reason. Cool.
Bill, what did you start on? I'm curious about what everybody started on, because we got from like analog. I mean, I'm just looking at pointing at you guys on the screen. You can't see me pointing, but it's really cool that we're like bridging the whole, like going from analog, and then we have the mastering thing, which you're using a DAW now, but it's like how much of that mastering used to occur on tape, you know? That's cool.
Let's not forget the DA88s and the ADAT era.
That I started on ADATs. What did you start on, Bill? Were you on ADATs at all? I know you're
so my progression is a little weird. The first time I ever did any work was on a Yamaha O2R and Pro Tools and a Digio O2. I mean, that was the first setup I ever worked on. But then after I fell in love with the craft, I knew that I was missing something. And so I went and learned all the stuff. I sought out Neve consoles and APIs and tape machines and all the different stuff, and learned, you know, I felt like if I was going to do it, then I was like cheating if I didn't understand how it all worked. So even though my first experience and you know, for a few months, my first, you know, recording situation was all digital, I did go back and learn all the stuff. And now when I teach, I make sure that when I'm teaching kids how to use EQs and compressors and stuff, that I use outboard gear, because I feel like it helps you when you can put your fingers on it and make minor adjustments. You know, it's so hard sometimes to like take your little mouse and turn a knob one click, you know, whereas when your fingers are on it, you know, you can make these little teeny minor adjustments that just, like, you know, are mind-blowingly important. So starting point, yes, I started in a digital world, but I think it's important to go back and learn the analog stuff.
And I know with Karen talking too, she mentioned about using the original versions of these hardware pieces of gear and then going to the plugins, and being used to doing that. And there's so many kids, like I have interns in, that don't know. They've always just, I mean, they don't have they don't have any other choice but to learn from plugins, but they don't know what those plugins are emulating. You know what I mean? They're just a GUI on a screen that looks cool, but they don't know that those things were actually hardware pieces of gear. And it's really hard. It's really hard to me when I show a kid that and they go like, whoa, like to me, it's like the learning curve of going, that used to actually all have to be in a rack like this, that spanned your whole room twice maybe. And learning that is sometimes kind of left out of learning, I think, like it's left out of, it's kind of hard too. It's kind of hard to bring these kids into a studio that has all those original pieces of gear and stuff. But anyway, I'm asking you guys questions for my own benefit. I'm sorry.
A good question.
Do I have to pay you to attend the panel now?
Right. So we have another question coming in. This is from Aaron Flyer, and it is, what is some advice for automation with analog gear? How does one keep track of all the automation edits?
Good question.
Who wants? Yeah,
the only two analog pieces of gear I have, you mentioned earlier, Karen, that you had two distressors. I have two distressors. I think they're actually in my rack that you can see back there. And I have to recall on those. And I just put the recall in the comments section of the Pro Tools channel that I use it on. I just put that. I have 4 knobs on it, and I just put I write in my comments of the Pro Tools, like if I insert a hardware piece of gear, I'll insert a distressor on bass when I mix or something. Yeah. And if I do that, I'll just mention in my comments, I just put distressor 3-to-1, and then I put 10-to-8 5.5, and I know that that's my 4 knobs, and that's the value.
Yeah. The comment box is very user friendly and a good thing to have for sure.
I built a custom database for our recall because I wanted something that was searchable and easy to keep track. So I built it all in FileMaker Pro.
Cool.
So that's what we use because most of what we do is fully outboard. So I've got everything dialed in, little drop down lists for every notch of every piece of gear. Took me forever to build.
Oh, I bet.
It's worth it.
Oh my God. Well, having a computer that'll still run FileMaker Pro.
I think FileMaker Pro is rocking right now. They're
it used to be my invoice software way back when. And it got so outdated it wouldn't open on an OS.
Oh,
I was like,
no, it's slick now. They're using JavaScript. It's way beyond my little basic coding skills.
That's so cool.
Isn't there a thing we use it for our CRM, for tracking clients and projects and invoicing and everything. And then the recall database, it's all integrated. So I love FileMaker. I'm also a huge database nerd. So
I think that's a separate seminar that you need to teach all by yourself.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Isn't there a thing called Patch Rat or something like that? I see it advertised Patch Rat or Patch App or something that has the GUI of the actual piece of gear. I don't know how it actually works, but I see it and I'm like, oh, if I ever had the time in my life to learn how to use that, it would be really cool.
Very cool. So we have another question rolling in, and this one is, what are some techniques you use to protect your hearing while in a studio setting?
Huh? That's a joke.
Well, just don't turn it up too loud for a long period of time. I like to listen at the tiniest low level to medium, and then 2-3 times in the whole session, all day session, I might turn it up. My hearing, I'm almost 70 and I hear great.
I wear earplugs at all live music events that I go to.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah.
And then if clients want to hear it loud, guys will be like, turn it up, and it's way louder than I really want to listen to something at. I'll turn it up, and then I'll take that opportunity to take a however long the song is break, and I just turn it up and let them sit here, and I walk out of the control room.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I've got custom earplugs for live music, which are absolutely essential to me. And then taking ear breaks is super important. It also just gives me a space to clear my head and, you know, kind of get out of the space mentally and you know, physically. Yeah, so ear breaks, lots of them.
Ear breaks. Yes, fabulous.
I want to mention something. Anna, are those the bolts that were squeezed into your ears with the 15, 25 dB attenuators in them?
Yeah, so I've got two separate pairs. I've got some 17 dB attenuation, and then the other ones are 9 dB attenuation. So I've got Westone is one brand, and then ACS is the ones I've been using mostly. I mean, not over the last year because I haven't needed them, but.
Yeah, I want to mention students that are out there, anybody that's going into a music program. On my way to App State as a drummer, my mom was wise enough to take me to an audiologist and get those for me before I went up and was a drummer for my instrument of choice. And honestly, it really has saved my hearing as much as possible being a drummer. So it was a wise thing, and I use them today still. 20 some years later. So anybody else want to chime in on that? We have one more question too. Okay. So we kind of talked about this. A division of labor has occurred, and you know, in a lot of things, and it's changed in music and audio production. What do you find yourself doing in your job today that you never thought would be a part of your job as a audio content creator? Anybody want to
playing psychiatrist? Dealing with people's emotional issues about their skills, you know, pampering them, turning the lights down, light candles, you know, things like that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. You know, it's a lot of kind of hand holding, and then I work with so many independent artists that just helping them navigate the space of, okay, I've created this album. What do I do now? Like, how do I get it out to the world? You know, because the streaming atmosphere is totally different from like making a bunch of CDs and, you know, throwing them in the trunk of your car and selling them on the street, you know, like MC Hammer did or whatever. But you know, it's now it's like you have to like, you know, go through CD Baby or, you know, TuneCore, DistroKid, or like all these digital distributors. And so I do a lot of just kind of hand holding through that process of like, go through this avenue. And then, you know, there's the whole marketing aspect. And it's being an artist these days it's not easy. It's so much self-promotion, and that's not an easy, that's not a comfortable space for a lot of artists. So
I think just the amount of information that you take in when you do this for a long time, that I always took for granted that if I could learn how to do it without any education, and I just literally bought all the stuff and learned how to do it, I'm like, well, obviously if I can do that, everybody can do it, you know. But it takes a different breed of person to continue to do it. Number one, you know, and just not stop, not let the everyday challenges make you go, well, I'm going to go get a job somewhere else and actually have a 401k plan and make money, you know, or anything like that. But when you get into it for life and all the information that you have, you think that people that come in on sessions, like your clients, actually know, you think they know about ASCAP, you think they know about copywriting songs, you think they know about licensing, you think they know about publishing. And there's so many of those things that when they come in, you realize that all they know is that song they're working on and whatever they play on it most of the time. And you know more than they know about their song after 30 minutes because of an arrangement mind and because of a lot of other things. But then they ask you questions that you think are elementary, and just because you've done it and you've crossed that bridge already, you have to, you know, like I could charge a whole separate service for sitting down and explaining licensing and publishing and how to sign up for all this stuff. When I look at it and I'm just like, dang, there's Google and there's the internet. Like literally everything that you want to know is at your fingertips. And it really is. If you have a question about it, but it's like Pro Tools. It's like, I know I want to do something. I just don't know what it's called. So I can Google search, but I don't know what I'm asking Google half the time. And these kids don't either. I say kids, these, clients don't either. And they'll get to a certain point where they really need to know that. And you have to sit down and explain music business things to them that aren't making records or engineering or how to play a part or arrangement or anything like that. So.
I just want to just thank you guys all again for that. I do want to mention, in this world that we're in, used to, there were textbooks that would take you through the process of learning something. And today, like was pointed out by Benjy, we have all these things, but yet at the same time, there's no road to go on. So we have all this information, but we don't know what we're looking for. So I think that's a really good point. That's all we have time for. I think this has been great. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Strother Bullins, and I do want to reintroduce everybody if you came in late. It's Anna Frick, Karen Kane, Benjy Johnson, and Bill Stevens with us today. And make sure that you check out all of the trainers. There's information about the trainers on the website. That's traincycle.org/trainers. And don't forget to visit the AMPed Expo featuring the sponsors and the partners that made this event possible. You can find the link in the itinerary or by visiting the summit page on our website. And thank you. Next is the tour at the Tanger Center at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, folks.